We're joined by Philip Woodburn, Director, Finance Shared Services Asia Pacific for Schneider Electric. How are you today, Philip?
I'm good, Darwin, thank you, and I'm very happy to be here at this wonderful SSON event.
Thank you so much. Well, Philip, we wanted to know, with so much diversity in the region, how can a shared services organization manage cultural differences effectively? Are there some key points to consider when one is doing business for the first time, say in India or China?
It's a very good point that you mentioned. I presume that behind your question, the other question that we can ask is, if you're coming from the West or coming from Europe or US, for example, how do you adapt to the cultural impact of Asia? And it's a very relevant point, because most Asian cultures are not so expressive as they are in the West. So in order for you to really know what somebody is thinking, you need to delve a little bit into the details. You need to get people alone. You need to find different contexts that you can connect with people in. In America, for example, people are very outspoken, and they will very rapidly disagree on the subject openly. In Asia, disagreements are often a bit more behind the closed door. But if you ignore that and you don't get into that dynamic, sometimes you can lose the key points that you need to have to really know how things are going, and to have the right connectivity with your people. And another thing that I think is important is really knowing that, cultural variations break down into some different subgroups in the region. I mean, for example, if you take countries like the Philippines, we can say that the culture, because it's been more influenced by America, is not totally Western, but also not totally Oriental. So they would be a bit more outspoken, a bit more communicative. And sometimes I think it's easy to interpret information and communication with knowledge, and one has to be aware of that and to be able to probe into that. If we take China, on the other hand, which has a much more passive communication dynamic, you have to really be able to read behind the scenes to really understand what's going on and what people think. And then you look at India as a third dynamic, and in India, because it's a big democracy, people are used to having a consultative approach. Nothing is decided until it's consulted. Unlike in China, where people are much more used to a top-down approach, even if that's changing today with the younger generation having more opportunity to growth and to prosper.
Very interesting observation there from Philippines, China, and India. Can you talk about the complexities of managing talent across Asia, especially with the increased competition in attracting and retaining key talents?
Yes. It's a very good point. And what we can observe in those three centers is a difference between senior positions and junior positions. In fact, today, what I tell my superiors is that for senior position, whether you're in the Philippines, you're in India, you're in China, the pay and the expectation is more or less the same. You're chasing after a small pool. It's a bit different when you move down into the lower levels, where you do get some differences in terms of cost structure, China being probably higher than other developing parts of Asia. And I think it was interesting in the seminar today, we had a very good presentation on growth of a country versus the talent pipe coming into the marketplace. And we can see that the big challenge in China, for example, is high growth, but not enough talent coming in the marketplace, and also not enough educators to really fill up the void today. So I believe very strongly that one of the roads forward for China would be to tap into some of the other Mandarin speaking capabilities, especially in Southeast Asia, Singapore and Malaysia, for example, in order to make up the shortfall. It also presents a challenge to companies just focusing on the East Coast, and the need to really move inland to find in the west of China some new talent amongst the developing cities of the western part of China. In India, we can see another dynamic where you have a big supply of potential talent, a strong growth in the economy, and a strong need to educate, with probably a lower level of linguistic ability in English, if we take it as a percentage of population, compared to some of the other developing countries, but a big hunger for knowledge and actually training. And I think that we heard that from our Generation Y group today, that training is one of the big expectations that people have. And interestingly enough, salary is number 3. We heard that today, that people are more interested in their careers and more interested in training than they are in salary in terms of the rank of priorities in selecting the right employer for them today and in the future.
Very interesting. Really a complex region, I would say.
Yes, definitely.
What are the important lessons that other organizations can learn from Schneider Electric in terms of managing cultural differences?
I think you need to be open. I think you need to listen. I think you need to look at the body language as much as the spoken word. That's a very important lesson and a learning point from doing business in Asia. You need to know that consultation is very important in Asia. In countries like India in particular, you need to get the buy-in. When you're managing change, there's a lot of buy-in that you need to get from the actors in the organization. Even if you don't necessarily do everything that everybody wants, you need to consult. You need to have some input before you formulate your decision and move forward. I think another thing that's very important for people to take into account is that Asia is very focused on execution, and not always focused on the development of process and documentation, and sometimes having some Western-based support for focusing in those areas can help us to make sure we set up the right processes and policies moving forward, knowing that our Asian workforce will execute perfectly the instructions and the documentary processes and work instructions that we put together.